Madam Co-Chairman. Co-Chairman Lean.
This meeting will return to order. We've concluded public testimony on LSO 26 LSO 0145. I would like the director to come back up so we can ask him just a couple questions. Thank you, Director Larramendi. The first question that I would pose to you is, it was mentioned in testimony that there are calls about some of the HHR locations. How does the commission go about handling those OTB locations that have many calls?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So all of our locations are required to fill out incident reports when anytime local law enforcement, ambulance calls, any types of service calls like that are happen. And then we monitor those. There are times though that a city or town may be having issues that they don't ever make the commission aware of. So I would strongly encourage any sort of local governments to be in contact with our office whenever they have concerns. We have a dedicated team of individuals who deal strictly in compliance that we can put out in the field in these locations to monitor those and to assist and make sure that everything's being followed and those are rectified.
Thank you. The next question would be in regards to the 100-mile rule. You provided us a document in July at that committee meeting. And it talks about the 100-mile rule limitation. We heard from the business owner some of how it was implemented on their part. Could you walk us through the commission's part and from 2022 and 2023, best as you can recall, how those how the commission handled enforcement of that 100-mile rule?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at the beginning of every race meet, the operators have to come up with a condition book, which shows everything that's going to take place during that season. And in that condition book, it gives the post times for the days of the races. We take those post times and then we inform the other operators that don't have agreements of the first post time of the race day, and they are required to shut down all wagering activity 10 minutes before the first post time. So they already have the post times. They will work with the tote companies, and the tote companies can actually configure the machines to just basically shut off at that time. And then at the conclusion of the race, when the last race goes official, one of our team members or investigators that's at the track will contact each closed location individually and let them know that they can reopen. And then throughout the day, we will also, all of our compliance team, myself, we have access to all of the camera feeds for every location, and we can monitor the cameras to ensure that there's no wagering activity going on at a location that is required to be closed.
Committee, any further questions for the director in regards to this legislation? Seeing none, thank you. We've closed public comment on this piece of legislation.
Yeah, we just did it.
Are there any motions on the floor?
Yeah, I'd move the bill.
There is a motion to move the bill. Is there a second? Moved by Kolb, seconded by Craigo. Would you like to go through the bill one page at a time? On the first page, any potential amendments or conversation? Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. We're going to return to page 3 and Representative Johnson.
Get my notes here. Starting on line 4, page 3, with subject to paragraph. And then, my notes. Delete section 3 of that section. Triple I.
Starting at line 14.
Through 23.
The amendment on the floor is to strike lines 14 on page 3.
Well, yeah, it's actually to delete.
Into page 4, lines 1 through 13. That's the amendment.
Yes.
Eat it again.
The motion on the floor is to amend from page 3, starting at line 14, to strike through page 4, line 13. Essentially remove all of section 3. Is there a second? Is there a second? Hearing no second, that amendment does fail. Further amendments on page 3? Page 4? Senator Krigo.
Madam Chairman, for purposes of discussion, and hopefully we can have a discussion about the 100-mile rule. So I would make a motion to insert the language proposed by LSO on page 5, middle, which would be lines 18 through 25. Then if I can get a second, I'll explain why.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for discussion. Senator Craig.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. So, I mean, obviously, we've heard lots of discussion about the 100-mile rule. I understand why some of the operators and also some of the in particular, the counties, maybe not necessarily the municipalities, but I understand why some of the operators don't think it serves its purpose anymore. And I think in practice, to some degree, that is correct. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I do see, and just in visiting with our colleagues in the Senate last year, it's a bigger issue maybe on the floor than it is out in practice. And so I'm a little concerned if we don't include the 100-mile rule or some version of it. And I know we can talk about the county line rule, but if we don't include that, I think we're going to have a hard time with this piece of legislation. That's the first thing it'll be the sticking point on moving this bill forward is the 100-mile rule. We're going to have some very intense discussions on our end of the hall. And so for purposes of trying to keep this simple, because we also heard that it's probably not going to affect how anybody's running their business. They're going to continue to do business the way they're doing. They just will shut down on those days if they're not able to come to an agreement with the other operators, or in this case, one operator. I'd prefer we keep it in as we move the bill forward. If we get to session and by then circumstances have changed, or we've, the Senate decides it's not that important, we can have that discussion. But I'm just trying to take out all of the controversial things that I see from our perspective on the Senate end. And so that's why I'd like to, keep the 100-mile rule in and not repeal it.
Further discussion? Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mayor Co-Chair. Yeah, I tend to agree with Senator Crago. It's not worth the fight. Keep the 100 miles in. It doesn't make any difference. It's been testified to, even though it's old and really, frankly, not useful. So to keep it in to get this piece of legislation through the process is probably a benefit, and it might be stripped anyway or modified by the time it comes back from the both bodies. But I think for sake of moving this much needed piece through the process, it's not worth the fight, and it doesn't seem to make any difference. So I used to be a lover of the 100-mile rule. I'll just say that in all honesty. I was I was one of the people in Sweetwater that had to sign that affidavit for the, under the judge's rule that it must be signed. And the only thing I ever signed under protest. So it was all because it's 100-mile rule, and it's much the same as what's testified to by Mr. Michael I about the reasons why it started between Rock Springs and Evanston's track. So it was necessary at one point, but I think this is the year 2025, and it doesn't seem to have a purpose anymore. So if it stays in, if it makes it better, I'm all for it. That's my reasons for supporting this.
Further discussion? I'll just say that, given the 100-mile rule, and if we are closing businesses in the state of Wyoming, at this point, many people are abundantly given the opportunity to just jump on an electronic device and continue gaming there versus go to a track. And so that would be my concern with keeping it in. I do understand what the Senate is saying as far as making sure this piece of legislation reaches a milestone on the governor's desk. Is everyone clear on the amendment? We shall be adding page 5, lines 18 to 25 to reinsert that into the bill. All those in favor of this amendment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That amendment has passed. Further amendments on page 4 or 5. Page 6. I might make a motion on page 6 that we amend how it's published, that the notice for application is published just with general circulation. Is there a second? So this would be page 6, lines 11 to 15.
Second.
Moved by Lean, seconded by Webb.
I will second that for discussion.
Just for discussion purposes, the notice portion is changing in today's world. And as we've recently seen with local newspapers, they can disappear from some of our communities very quickly and then reappear. And so we just want to make sure that if we're giving them the general circulation phrase, that they're able to get that notice out to the public. Further comments? Senator Craigo.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, so just tell me exactly are we just changing the word local to general, or are we, I mean, what exactly is your proposed amendment as far as the language, Madam Chairman?
And I would defer to LSO.
Madam Chair, I've interpreted that on page 6, line 13, strike local and insert general. So it would be publish notice of the application in a newspaper of general circulation once a week for 2 weeks and shall post the notice on its official website.
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, and this might be a question for Tamara. I mean, do we have that defined? I mean, so we obviously, all the counties have their publication, their official publication, their newspaper, you know, they have to denote that every year at the beginning of the year. They do that in January. What does general circulation mean?
Madam Chair, Senator Craigo, thank you. I don't think I can answer that with the specifics that the local entities probably could, but there are multiple other places in statute. In fact, all of our other places in statute that refer to circulation of a newspaper now refer to general circulation. The local circulation bit is a piece that I think the only place in statute it exists was for the liquor licenses. And so when this bill draft was modeled on liquor license statutes, we carried in that local circulation, and it came up at our August meeting of how difficult times were becoming for local newspapers. And so that would just conform it with all the other circulation requirements, which I understand to be just a bit more broad, maybe a statewide newspaper versus a city newspaper.
Follow up. So Tamara, in essence, it's a bit of a conforming amendment. So we just have more uniformity through the green books.
Ms. Tammy?
That's correct. At least it won't solve the problem of newspapers and notice, but at least it'll be consistent throughout statute.
Thank you. Representative Webb.
Just to make sure I'm clear on this. If we change this to general circulation, does that mean that they wanted to do something in Evanston, but the only thing they have to do is advertise in Cheyenne?
Tamara, I'm going to ask if you can answer that one.
I think I would have to research that a little bit more and ask the counties whether they have any interpretive guidance, the counties and localities, if they have any interpretive guidance on how they advise on that.
Thanks.
Mr. Reaman, would you maybe opine on this situation with general local circulation?
Mister, you stayed around a little too long there.
Welcome, Mr. Reaman. Thank you for taking our time.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of committee, Jeremiah Reaman on behalf of the County Commissioners Association again. I appreciate that you're taking up this conversation because obviously this has been a little bit difficult, or it looked like it might be a bit difficult for some of the counties. My sense is that if we change that to general circulation, that we could pick a newspaper somewhere across the state that had circulation. It wouldn't be prescriptive that it had to be your local newspaper, assuming they're available. So maybe we need to work on that, and I'm happy to work with you and the Press Association and others on it.
Thank you for that. Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Jeremiah, what is the County Commission Association currently doing about the issue we're having about publications and newspapers of record? Is there an update there? I mean, it sounds like maybe not, but where is the County Commissioner Association on how to do their advertising?
Madam Chairwoman, Senator Kolb, are you speaking specifically to how counties do that? Yeah, I mean, certainly this became an issue that we met immediately with the Press Association to try and understand how we might provide guidance back to the counties as they work to scramble through that. I'll just use a couple counties as examples. Sublette County immediately convened a meeting to try and understand what would be their best option. Is that a newspaper that at least a newspaper with a online publication resource that was available through their community? Would that be the best one to do? Would that check all the boxes, or should they go to a newspaper in one of the surrounding counties? Ultimately, I think they identified a newspaper in a surrounding county that they would ultimately publish in so that they could meet that circulation threshold. Sweetwater County certainly benefited because a number of jurisdictions, Uena County, Sublette, and others looked at your local newspaper as one that could serve their needs. I think we dodged a bullet because those newspapers came back online, but it is certainly something that we're concerned about long-term. How do we meet the needs of public transparency as local as possible without a constraint on the local governments to do that? So I think it's at least worth continuing the conversation and how we can best address this, not only here, but elsewhere in statute. But at least in that instance, the local governments found newspapers that were in close proximity to their jurisdiction.
Thank you, Mr. Reaman. Any further questions on the newspapers for Mr. Reaman?
Call the question.
Thank you for your time. The question on the amendment to move from local to general circulation on line 13 on page 6. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
This amendment has been adopted. Further amendments on page 6. On to page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Senator Craigo.
Madam Chairman, I'm gonna propose the following amendment, which would be a new paragraph, subparagraph D on line 18. And this, I'll read it and then we can have a discussion, if I can get a second. So the amendment would be to add a paragraph D that states as following: the welfare of the people residing in the jurisdiction where the permitted premises is located is adversely and seriously affected by the permitted premises.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Craigo, seconded by Cole.
So, Madam Chairman, I mean, we had discussion about bad actors, and remember, this is in the part that deals with renewals and revocation. And so, although we're giving the right to revoke or deny a renewal, we're really not giving very many reasons why. And so these reasons are delineated. And it says shall be limited to any of the following. So for good cause, which shall be limited to any of the following: breach of a reasonable condition imposed by the local approving authority, which those are also listed earlier in the, in the bill, which could be hours of operation, et cetera. It doesn't get into the whole conversation we had a little bit ago about bad actors. And if you have a facility or a premises where we're having all sorts of issues, those conditions don't really apply. You're not going to have a condition that says you shall prevent stabbing at your facility. You shall prevent assault at your facility. That's not something that's going to show up in there. Those also aren't violating the law. They're not causing the bad actors or bad actions, but they're not preventing them either. And so notification from the commission that the permit holder has acted in violation of any Wyoming gaming law, I don't think that necessarily applies either. And then C is the commencement within 2 years, which is just sort of the dormant permits. I'm not saying this is the perfect language, and I'm willing to work with all of the industry folks going forward and the municipalities and the counties. But I think we should put up some sort of placeholder in right there that says if we have a bad actor, there's something that can be done upon renewal or for revocation, because otherwise it's not there. There's nothing in there that allows them to revoke. I mean, we're really not giving them much power at all, other than if you operate your business outside the business hours or other conditions, for example, where the machines are located in the facility. And so again, not sure that's the perfect language. I think we can talk about it. Obviously, this is going to go to management council. We can talk about it again there. We also will have opportunity between now and session to work with all the stakeholders to figure out if we want to tighten that language up. But for now, I think it's a good placeholder. It's language that was in previous versions of this bill. And so that's the purpose of my proposed amendment.
Would you kindly restate it one time for us? Just reread it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chairman. The welfare of the people residing in the jurisdiction where the permitted premises is located is adversely and seriously affected by the permitted premises.
Thank you. Further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? This language has been adopted. Further amendments on page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Oh, Senator Craigo.
So Madam Chairman, this pertains to the appeal process. And during our discussion, I had a conversation, both with Mr. Edwards and Ms. Ellis. And I've had other conversations with the city and the county, the cities and the counties about how this appeal process should work. And, my opinion, and I'll read this, then I'll give the explanation. So my amendment would be line 4, page 11. After the word authority, add the following language. If the local approving authority has not previously granted any approvals for a simulcasting permit, period. If the local approving authority has previously granted an approval for any simulcasting permit, comma, the applicant may appeal to the district court in the county where the application was filed.
Did you get a second?
Second. So it's been moved by Senator Crago and seconded by Lean for discussion. Representative Johnson?
Let's repeat that.
Madam
Could you
Chairman?
reread that one time, please?
Yes. So after the word authority, we would add the following language on page 11, line 4. If the local approving authority has not previously granted any approvals for a simulcasting permit, period. If the local approving authority has previously granted an approval for any simulcasting permit, comma, the applicant may appeal to the district court in the county where the application was filed.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this amendment? Senator Crago?
Yeah, so I've started outside of Robert's Rules of Order, explaining my amendment, and so I apologize for that, Madam Chairman. Really, this is sort of splits the difference between an appeal right on every application and no appeal right on every application, and on the new, when we're only talking about new applications here, right? And so my thinking is if you're in a jurisdiction that already has 3 or 4 locations for simulcasting, and it's your first time of applying there and you get denied, you should have a right. You should get an explanation and a right to appeal on why your permit was denied. If that particular jurisdiction has never allowed simulcasting permit because for whatever reason, then there isn't a right. And I think, you know, the counties talked about a little bit ago that there are counties and there are jurisdictions where there are no gaming facilities. There are no simulcasting permits granted because they don't want them. They haven't previously granted them. In that case, if you're denied, you don't get to appeal. There's no grounds for appeal. But if they have 2 or 3 sitting there and you're denied, you get to test the system. You get to test your denial based on those factors that are set forth in here. And I think there might be a little bit more work on this going forward. We might have to delineate and draw a few more things out. But for now, I think this gets us to a point where you at least would get the right to appeal if anyone else had been granted that permit in the county or in the city as we move forward, because right now we don't have the cities haven't actually granted any up until this point.
Further discussion?
Well, we discuss it amongst ourselves first.
Mhm.
No, I think, well, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is once again, a middle ground point of view that we try to split the issue between the process and give folks a chance to appeal under a case lined out by Senator Crago where they already have people operating within that county. So this is an attempt in my mind to reach a compromise. So that's why I'm supportive of it. I think it gets us there more than a full on one of the processes mentioned before. This is something that we can do without damaging places, number one, that don't want gaming within their community, say Teton County currently, without going through an appeals product, in the court. So this is a way of, once again, in legislation of seeking a middle ground. So that's why I'm in support of it.
Thank you. Further comments? Discussion? LSO, do you have the language that Senator Crago has spoken of? Yeah, okay. No further discussion. Let's vote on the amendment. The amendment that Senator Crago has proposed to add that on line 4 and continue forward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair is in doubt. I'm gonna call for division myself because chair is in doubt. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And all those opposed? On 4-2, that does fail, or is adopted, excuse me. That is adopted, 4-2.
Well, it's a roller coaster. Adopted, fail.
More amendments for page 11. Amendments for page 12. Page 13. Senator Crago.
Madam Chairman, I don't think we necessarily need an amendment. I just wanted to make sure we have the conforming language on this, on the 100-mile rule that would be it. It's included on page, at the bottom of page 14 on the repealer. I guess, do we still repeal that? Question for Tamara, I guess. Do we leave the repealer in since we're adding it back in a different manner? Is that how we would do that, Tamara?
Well, there's no,
Ms. Tamara.
Thank you. Yes, that would be consistent with the bill draft. Right now, where we were adding on to simulcasting and historic horse racing, permitting and imposing quite a bit of new language within statute, we've taken it from the definition where it used to exist, where you see it on page 15. So everything that's there on page 15 that's being stricken, we're either recreating it in the bill draft, or for the 100-mile rule, we were just striking it. Now we would recreate it consistent with the rest of the provisions that you see being repealed. So essentially, we're moving it from a definition into its own section.
Thank you. Further amendments, page 14, 15, and 16. Seeing no further amendments, is there discussion on the bill?
started off. Madam Chair.
Chair.
Can I go?
Okay.
Can I go? Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, first off, I'd like to thank everybody that worked on this document. Didn't come easy. It's something that's come a long way. And I think it's a document that can make it through the process. I guess we'll find out what gets tacked onto her as by the time it pops out the other side. And hopefully we get buy-in on all sides to get this through for local control, only because we don't have local control. It's going to give authority to the Gaming Commission that they don't currently have. It's going to give authority to counties and cities they don't currently have. It goes a long way from nothing to something because we don't have anything now. I think we figured that out. There's just no control. It is what it is right now. And this will address those issues. And I'd like to say to the task force, first off, it's been a group effort to get to this point, and it's been a compromise. It's not to say we all agree with everything in here. I think we all have parts in here that maybe we'd like a little different, but it's a product that we can move forward through the process. And for the folks in the House, you get to work on it when it comes over to your side. And the folks in the Senate, we get to work on it when it comes over on our side, right? So everyone's going to have a chance and another bite at the apple. But we've got to get something going. I think that's the problem. It's gotten so big. This is one way that we can get our arms around it, because it's only going to get worse next year and the year after and the year after. And it might take us a few attempts to get something done. It may, but this is a first step that we can actually move forward with and get back some local control to people who are elected locally. And so that's why I'm in support of this document. It's certainly not exactly what I wanted, but that's okay. It's a compromise that was worked on by many entities, and I'm good with that. And I'm good with continuing to work on this and to improve it because there'll be more people looking at it besides us. And so that's why I'm in support of it. And I'd like to thank once again everybody who's worked on it, although it might not sound like thanks sometimes, but thank you very much. And that's my remarks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Further remarks? Seeing none, is there a motion on the floor? Are we ready to vote?
Question.
Roll call vote.
I'm not sure who's calling roll, but LSO, will one of you please call the roll?
Yes, on 26 LSO 0145 as amended, Senator Craig,
Aye.
Senator McCune,
Aye.
Representative Johnson,
No,
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Cole,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Lean.
Aye.
Madam Co-Chairman, you have 5 aye, 1 no.
And this will move forward to Management Council. And we'll look forward to presenting that in November.
Yes, with the good, luckily we have a member of management council on this task force, which is gonna greatly help in us presenting this to, and then we'll see what happens.
Our next piece of legislation to review will be 26 LSO 168. If we can have someone from LSO to present. Oh, no, I didn't ask her to draft any.
I thought you had something already written
Oh.
down.
I do have that one. When you're ready, Miss Tamara, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This final bill draft that's on our agenda is 26L LSO 168, and it's version 0.6. So as you remember, at the August meeting, the committee took a good portion of its, or excuse me, at the September meeting here in Cheyenne, the committee took a good portion of its meeting to discuss the prior version of this. And what's before you is the amendments you've adopted to that bill draft back in September, incorporated into that bill. So we last saw, I think, 0.4. This is working draft 0.6 before you. And specifically, those amendments were to remove the concept of amortization for zoning, a way to phase out non-conforming uses. And then there was a reference to parimutuel event days other than live horse racing days, which we'll get to where that was at. I'll try to point that out to you. So the committee worked the bill, heard quite a bit of public testimony, made a few amendments, and then did not essentially vote on whether to recommend. They tabled it. You all tabled it until today. And so here it is before you with those amendments you've already made. I'll go over it quickly since we worked it so hard last meeting, but please slow me down if we have any questions. And I guess the broadest terms, this bill clarifies that cities, towns, and counties may only regulate the location of historic horse racing and simulcasting through their local zoning authority. So rather than the bill you just saw and approved, which is all about an entity's approving, the local government approving an simulcasting and historic horse racing, this takes away all of that approval and moves it to just local zoning authority. Then the second part of the bill is that it limits the number of terminals that may be operated statewide, providing that no permit holder may add new terminals if there's existing ones that they have been licensed for that are not in use, and further capping total terminals at 1,200 per live flat track operated. So on page 1, the act generally relates to parimutuel wagering. So again, no skills-based amusement game or any other type of gambling regulated in this act, just parimutuel wagering. Amending requirements, approval, and restrictions for simulcasting permits, facilities, and terminals. Requiring rulemaking, authorizing local zoning for simulcasting parimutuel wagering facilities, and specifying applicability. On the beginning of page 1 and on to page 2 are amendments to existing law. This is an amendment to the definition of simulcasting, which has actually been repealed in the bill you just adopted to move forward for Management Council's consideration. But what this would do is to go into the definition of simulcasting and make one conforming reference to a statute you're amending there on page 2, line 8. And then clarify on page 2, lines 11 through 21, that a county need not approve simulcasting. The applicant only need to submit evidence that they have complied with all local zoning regulations. And if there are none, then by law, that counts as compliance. On page 3, we begin the amendments to cap historic horse racing terminals. This is subsection M, page 3, line 5. With respect to simulcasting permit, the Gaming Commission shall adopt rules 2 and 1 is the existing requirement, and that's to establish the number of actual live horse racing or other parimutuel event days required to qualify. The strike is just a little bit of conforming language where we've sort of recreated it above on lines 5 and 6. So that requirement hasn't changed. Then the new requirement 2 is to specify requirements for parimutuel wagering terminals, including all of the following. And A is that if there are any terminals authorized that are not in use, the Gaming Commission would not approve new terminal operation until they're either they've used all that they've already been approved for, or perhaps they've revoked their approval for ones that they are not intending to use. Then B is the new requirement that the Gaming Commission adopt rules to limit permit holders to not operate more than 1,200 permits or terminals in the state for each live flat track on which they conduct a live horse race. And that's where the committee amended it. The bill used to refer to or other parimutuel event day because technically statute has always allowed a live horse racing or other parimutuel event day to be qualifying for a HHR permit. This bill draft now limits that for the 1,200 limit at least. On page 4, it clarifies this is the General Commission's authority to issue permits where the Board of County Commissioners approval is required, and this just conforms that to clarify that the Board of County Commissioners would not need to approve the issuance of simulcasting parimutuel permits. So that was where the zoning was coming in to replace the approval. This would be a conforming amendment to make sure that that's clear in statute. On the bottom of page 5 and continuing on to page 6, this statute, this new subsection B would sort of reiterate what's probably already the case under existing laws, that if the people of the county decide they will allow parimutuel wagering, then the governing body of a city or town or county commissioners under their existing zoning authority may regulate and restrict buildings and structures in the use, condition of use, or occupancy of land operated as a simulcasting parimutuel wagering facility. On page 6, section 2 is direction of the Gaming Commission to promulgate rules necessary to implement the act. The statute lays out those conditions for capping historic horse racing terminals and through rule. And so this asks the Gaming Commission and gives them authority to begin working on the rules immediately with the effective date that we'll move on to. Section 3 is the applicability section, clarifies that a person that's already holding a simulcasting permit as of July 1st, 2026, when the bill would go into effect, would be authorized to continue operation until the expiration of the term of the permit, subject to the terms and conditions of their existing permit. Then upon application for renewal, the requirements of this act and any rules or local regulations would apply. Subsection 4 says that the bill is generally effective July 1st, 2026, except for sections 2 and 4, which are immediately, which allows the Gaming Commission to begin promulgating rules as soon as they can.
Thank you, Ms. Tamara. Any questions for LSO? Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to wrap my head around the number 1,200. Where did it come from? And does it mean 1,200 per place? So in the small towns, you could have 2 or 3 1,200 places, and then big towns more. It doesn't seem to be populated population controlled. And I just throw this out there for the committee. Would it be better if we looked at number of places which could control the number of machines? And just another way to crack the same nut. It kind of makes more sense to me, so I just bring that up, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McEwen, I may say, just add before we hand it over to LSO that 1,200 was a placeholder that I asked for in the drafting of the legislation. Furthermore, Tamara can answer the rest of your question.
Thank you. That's right. The number 1,200 was discussed at the August meeting and simply incorporated into that bill, and it was to be tied to each racetrack that an entity operates on. So if the entity has their own racetrack that they've built or that they've purchased and they're running races on it, they would have 1,200 permits available for use in the state. Anywhere that they could meet the other conditions for requirement, they could choose to divide those up. If they begin operating on a second track, so they begin to operate some of their live horse racing days through a lease or other arrangement with another track, they would get another 1,200 licenses. And I think the 1,200 license was based on some of the figures looking at existing tracks in the state and existing number of terminals that are authorized in the state. We certainly could revise it to be a locational restriction. So not trying to limit the amount of terminals that are out there, simply the amount of locations where terminals are located. Or it could be population based. There's lots of different ideas and ways we could craft this.
Thank you. Follow up?
Yes, Madam Chairman, and I do know that that was a placeholder there, but it was based on some science, obviously. I just wanted to look at it from a different way, and maybe that doesn't work. But it seems like that'd be another way to control the number of machines. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions for LSO? My question for you would be, with this legislation, given that cities, towns, and municipalities can, or counties can currently zone to regulate, if we were to take that portion out and just make this a cap bill, could it be a standalone bill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, you can remove the zoning requirements and have a standalone bill, simply capping under whatever formula you decide is appropriate, simply capping the number of terminals that may exist.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions for LSO. Oh, hold on, Representative Webb.
I don't know if mine's for LSO or for us generally, so we can answer it later if we need to. How would the number of locations work exactly?
Senator McEwen.
That would be another placeholder.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any science on the buildings either.
Just to remind the committee, the science of the 1,200 came from the current terminal counts that were operating within the state. So one entity has approximately 1,221 that are live. One has 890 that are live. One has 923 that are live. And then the permitting that's already been issued is 1,836 for one, 2,804 for another, and 1,289 for a third, with 282 hanging in the balance for the fourth. Just as a reminder. Thank you, Ms. Tamara. Director, any commentary for this piece of legislation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Specific to this one, these are policy decisions for you all. The commission will do whatever we need to do to conform with it. I don't have any heartburn either way.
Thank you, Director. I failed earlier in the day to recognize any other government organizations that wanted to come forward and comment prior to public comment. So I apologize for that. And if there's anyone that would like to come forward now, such as WHAM or WCCA, the governor's office, we'd like to hear from you. Thank you and welcome. Mr. Reeman, when you're ready.
Legislation as it stands, I don't believe that will be supportive of it. I am concerned quite greatly that this. I think I have this on.
Yeah, could you repeat, could you repeat what he said, the whole?
Thank you for turning on your microphone. Would you please repeat introducing yourself and your beginning thoughts?
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, apologize for that. I thought I had it on. Members of the committee, Jeremiah Reeman here on behalf of the County Commissioners Association. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. I don't know that we would be supportive of this legislation in its current form. We are concerned that this would authorize gaming where it currently is not authorized. So just as a little bit of background, and I gave this information at your last meeting, there are currently no counties with gaming specific zoning provisions. There are a number of counties that do have zoning. Right now, there are 13 of the 16 counties that have authorized HHR to exist, that where that activity is occurring. So currently in Teton, Platte, and Weston counties, there are no current HHR simulcasting facilities. 11 of those 16 counties have zoning, which means that there are 5 counties that don't have zoning in place at all for any activities. Johnson County is certainly one of those communities that doesn't have that. There are currently 2 of the 3 that don't have HHR that don't have zoning in place. Actually, let me back up. There's one of those 3 that doesn't have zoning in place. That's Weston County. But regardless, this bill, as it stands, would allow for HHR to happen in all 3 of those counties that don't have HHR. And at least one of those would be a really attractive location, Teton County. And they don't want to have this activity take place. Their authorization goes back to the 1970s. I was able to pull some information and I appreciate the department's help on this. And let me just pull it up quickly for you. Teton County gave its authorization to voters in 1973. Weston County in 1988, and Platte County is unknown. We're trying to track that one down. It's the only one that we don't have. So this change would mean that the decision of voters 40 years ago, 40 plus years ago, would be perhaps overridden. They did that on the assumption that counties were going to have some say. County commissioners were going to have some say on what activities took place in their counties. This would override that. This would allow for the activity to take place. Counties don't have the ability to full out block this activity. You said it is an allowable activity in the state. So we are concerned that you're going to ultimately allow for something that some communities don't want. I do want to also say I've seen the proposed or perhaps maybe proposed amendment. That would be, at least in terms of the bifurcation of city versus municipality, that'd be something that we oppose. You'd have to adopt something that looks similar to what we just did in the previous bill where you allow for counties to have at least the ability to provide an objection. Otherwise, we'll vehemently oppose the legislation. I've been very clear about that relative to this issue. I'm happy to again go into all those details of why, but I'll save that unless you would like me to do that. But with that, Madam Chairwoman, we're not supportive of this legislation as it's currently drafted.
Thank you, Mr. Reaman. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Reaman? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Lean. Mr. Reaman, you said there's 3 counties that do not allow gambling. Is that correct? That have not okayed the proposition to have gambling in their counties, and those counties are?
Mr. Reaman?
Madam Chairwoman, Representative Johnson, if I muddled that, I apologize. There are 3 counties where the voters at some point in the past have authorized HHR simulcasting to exist, but which there have been no county commissioner approvals. Those 3 counties are Weston, Teton, and Platte counties. Now, there are still another 7 counties that have not authorized it even through a countywide vote at this point in time.
Thank you. Follow up?
No, that's right.
Any further questions? Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No, Jeremiah, I got just a kind of a thought process here so we can maybe speed up time. And let's just say if this bill draft turned into a cap bill, capping the amount of machines, what is your position on that? And I know you haven't had maybe a chance to contemplate this, but let's just say we're talking about a straight up cap. We haven't set the number yet, but a straight up cap, X amount of machines. What, you have a position you take on that? That's my question, actually, for both, if when it comes down to testifying. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Mr. Reaman?
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, Senator Kolb, I don't know that we've gotten into a discussion as an association around a cap on the number of machines. Last year during the deliberations, there was a concept brought forward by Representative Walters that would have capped the number of permits, if I remember correctly. Something similar to what we currently have in place with our liquor license laws. We did begin to have the conversations around that concept. I don't know that we came to a final conclusion about it. I think some counties were favorable to that approach. Others were concerned because some were above threshold in terms of the number of permits they'd already authorized in relationship to what that would have put in place. And then others who hadn't actually had the opportunity to authorize it may not have benefited in the way that those counties that were ahead of the numbers. So a little bit of a fairness conversation that took place. But again, I don't think we came to a final conclusion because nothing was actually put into final bill draft for us to consider.
Thank you. Further questions? Thank you, Mr. Reaman. Ms. Juarez?
Chairman Lean and committee, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the cities and towns. I will do my best. I'm not the best at this, so bear with me. I do appreciate yours as well. I echo the sentiments. We feel the same way. This is just not a good change in the bill as it stands. So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity, but I also want to express my opposition to the proposed amendments to this local approval. Based predominantly on the fact that zoning is not a moral or social review process. It's a mapping tool. It tells us where things can go, not whether they should. By making gaming a by right use, this proposal would remove a city's ability to deny, condition, or later revoke approval once zoning is met. It turns gaming into an automatic right, not a privilege earned through public review, which is essentially erosion of local control. So permitting is not a land use question, it's about public safety and community character. Zoning was never meant to be the only gatekeeper for high impact uses such as this. It regulates where development occurs, not whether it belongs. So reducing the local authority to a zoning checkbox removes the deliberation and accountability that communities depend on. Wyoming has long honored the principle of local control, which gives municipalities the power to protect the safety, health, and welfare of its citizens. To centralize these decisions through state statute and remove the review of locally elected officials erodes that autonomy and undermines decades of legislative intent. Turning local approval into state-driven by right process replaces local judgment with bureaucracy. More concerning, once a facility meets zoning, there's no way back. No mechanism to revoke or reconsider. If problems arise later, cities and towns will be powerless to respond. So these amendments mean a gaming operator could gain permanent footing in our cities and towns without ongoing oversight, no public input, no local say, no local control. Think of zoning as a map. It tells you where different types of development may be considered, not whether a specific use should automatically be allowed. Zoning is about building form and site conditions, setbacks, parking, traffic flow, lot size, not the interior use or day-to-day operation inside a building. Take, for instance, building a house. The zoning map might say you can build in that area, but you still need a building permit before you can pour the foundation. The permit process protects both the homeowner and the city by ensuring everything is safe, compliant, and appropriate for that location. Gaming facilities should be treated the same way. Zoning tells us where they could go. The permit process decides if they belong there and how they can operate responsibly. Removing that step doesn't simplify the process, it removes accountability. What these amendments do is put heavy favoritism on this one specific business, allowing them to become vested at zoning, whereas no other business has that right. Other businesses must seek appropriate permitting as well as zoning compliance. So if you skip the permit step and you make zoning an automatic approval, you vest at zoning. By removing the local permitting, these changes make takings more likely, not less. The permitting vests twice, zoning only once. To remove local review from this process is to remove the voice of the people most directly affected. And with that, I would stand for any questions and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Juarez. Questions for Ms. Juarez? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, appreciate it.
Is there any public comment on this legislation? Anybody wishing to testify? And do we have anyone online for this legislation? Okay. Mr. Edwards, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Affie Ellis representing Cowboy Racing. I want to thank the committee for their hard work on the last bill. And Senator Crago, I think I flagged for you, we might need a cleanup amendment to the one you passed on the due process piece, but that was it's a critical issue for Cowboy Racing. So thank you for addressing it. I just wanted to offer a few thoughts on this bill. We just heard the county commissioner say that there are 3 counties, and we've testified to this before, Platte, Weston, and Teton County, that have approved simulcasting through a voter referendum or initiative or whatever. They've got the voter approval, but to date, they have not engaged in any simulcasting activity. It might be worth considering, if you advance this bill, to just make it a clean thing. If there hasn't been simulcasting within 5 years of that voter approval, it's no longer valid and requires a new vote. And that's a suggestion we've thrown out before. And so this issue keeps coming up again and again. And I think that's a much more elegant way of handling it and making it more clear, saying in those 3 counties, they got to have another election. And in that way, voters will be very informed about what approving a simulcasting would mean for their community. The second piece I wanted to talk about is something that we've been grappling with since we've been involved in this conversation. I think one of the impetuses of the last bill that we just heard was there is just too much gaming. These things are popping up everywhere. We have too much of it, too much of it, too much of it. Our concern has been that the easiest way is just to deny the new market entrants their ability to operate facilities and turn on some machines. And so I think that's one concern we've had. And obviously we have a moratorium bill that's still yet to be addressed. And so in thinking about the moratorium, we've testified that, we're at a competitive disadvantage compared to the existing operators. And so I think that's where some of this idea of a cap arose. And so, in lieu of a moratorium, certainly we support a cap because it's at least fairer to the operators. But if the committee doesn't share this sentiment that there's too much gaming, then why are we talking about this anyway? But if the committee does have concerns that we have too many of these facilities, I think just a little bit to Senator McCune's question about controlling the number of facilities versus the number of machines, I think both questions are appropriate to look at. I have visited with some of you in Kentucky, which we often, say we've modeled our laws after when in this industry. In Kentucky, there are 9 permitted tracks, and each operator is allowed to have a gaming facility on their permitted track, and they're allowed 1 extension facility. So in total, there are only 18 facilities that can be approved in Kentucky. They haven't reached that 18 mark. I think it's something less than that, but you get the idea. 18 for the state of Kentucky when it's 4.5 million people. If you look on Kentucky's website, they have a really nifty spreadsheet. You can do some searching. I recollect, and I would encourage the committee members to look at this. If you look at what Kentucky had back in April of this year, I think there are only 4,500 permitted machines. To date, I believe the last count I looked at was over 8,000. So if you're worried about controlling gaming, they've got a controlled number of facilities, but their number of machines are going to grow. And I should say, these are all numbers I looked at on my phone in the dark of night. So if people have more accurate data and I'm mistaken on those numbers, I apologize. But that was my recollection of some of those numbers. So I want to throw that out there of we're trying to react to what your goal is. Is the goal to just allow for local control? And that I think we've covered exhaustively. Or is it to control the number of machines? And if we're doing that, then we need to do it in a fair way. So I just want to kind of give that background of why we have been supportive of caps. It's in lieu of a moratorium, which is worse for us than a cap bill.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Any questions for Ms. Ellis? Mr. Edwards, did you have something to
Yeah,
add?
good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to address this issue of zoning. I keep hearing the use by right argument, and I just wanted to address it. And I apologize for the example. I don't like using this example, but it's the one that just sticks out in my mind as applicable, and that is adult bookstores. I can't think of a jurisdiction, and maybe somebody can correct me, where there's a use by right for an adult bookstore. Typically zoning ordinances are written where there's county business or community business, community residential, high density residential. There's different zoning ordinances. If you wanted to do an adult bookstore, for example, you would have to fit in one of those strict zoning community business zones, and then you would have to get additional approval from that municipality, at which time that municipality would approve you only under the conditions that they would create at the time that you would ask for that zoning. Okay, that is where a municipality or a county has the power to restrict time, place, manner of that business use. And that is how I see it has been applied to adult bookstores, for example. That is what I think we're suggesting with the use of zoning ordinances in controlling in local control for OTBs.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to add some color to that, I think you bring up an interesting point. They're called conditional use permits issued by, say, in counties. And there's already zoning in place, right? And that's on top of a zoning requirement is a conditional use permit. It's a different animal. I don't think it's really used in that. We never used it in that particular way in Sweetwater. Conditional use permits were for, say you had a dog kennel, and you'd say, okay, you can only operate between this hours and that, and they'd set up parameters for traffic that might come by the facility, and that was a conditional use permit scenario. So it's never was used in that way. Beyond really that, more specificity in a zone district that was under certain uses in a zone district that had another set of rules. And beyond that point, if already we have people already in the business of gaming, changing the district, changing the zoning, let's say, doesn't affect the people that currently are utilizing that business facility for that purpose. They're currently saying gaming, they utilize it for gaming. That doesn't change. That's grandfathered. So it's not, I don't know what mechanism we have there. If we did this, maybe I'll say it anyway. Well, if we did this right from the beginning, way back, say we had a crystal ball and we knew this was going to be a train wreck, maybe that would be a way of doing it back before we are where we're at today. Like someone said, we're already trying to work on an airplane while we're flying it. And that's really, I think, the challenge, just to kind of give you my perspective. But thank you for your comment, though.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Edwards? Thank you. If there's further public comment, please feel free to come forward. Online, is there online comment?
Yes, ma'am. I have just introduced him to the room. Pete Lagori.
Thank you. Mr. Lagori, can you hear us?
Yes, Chairman, I can hear you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I want two things just real quick. Wanted to thank the committee for moving Bill 01455 forward today. We're gratified to see that bill take another step closer to reality. We've always been supportive of local control and think as our colleague, Mr. Michael, I said earlier, we think it's a great step in the right direction. As it relates to this bill, I think we just wanted to reiterate or recover what we had discussed back in the September meeting, which was the placeholder in terms of units for a cap. We are currently under construction with two projects that should be done in the next 3 to 5 months that will bring our in-use totals up to 1,500 and over 1,500 units, just to say that. The concern with seeing the 1,200 unit bantered about is concerning for that reason. We've made investments, made business decisions based on the fact that we had the larger number of permits approved. And both of our touristic properties are designed to allow for easy expansion. And in some cases, we've already are taking steps to design additional expansions at both locations. So we would just really respectfully ask that the committee consider the long-term construction runway of some of these projects as they think about putting caps in. And I'll just speak for Wyoming Horse Racing. We understand that managed growth is important. We think there's a way to do that with the moratorium bill. But if there is a need to have hard cap numbers in place, we were supportive of a potential proposal that was put forth by Wyoming Downs that talked about location caps. If that doesn't work, obviously, the absolute number cap, we just like to see some discussion on that number before something was agreed to. And I would ask my colleagues at the desk, Mr. Michaelai and Ms. Urbicite, to add anything that they think that I missed out on.
Thank you, Mr. Lagori. Any questions from the committee? Thank you for appearing today, and we'll move to Mr. Michaelai.
Madam Chairman, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Just to be clear, I am the lawyer for Wyoming Horse Racing. Ms. Urbicite's the lobbyist, so we're just clear on that. But I did, and we've talked about this, I talked about it before, I'm not going to belabor the point, but the way that it works, when you're going to invest tens of millions, pushing $100 million now, you go in to get your permits. When you have those permits, then you can get financing, and then you can commit to building these types of huge investments that we're seeing coming, that we've been building, that we're building in Evanston, we've built here, we're doing in other places. And so our ask is simply to grandfather those permits in, the permits that have been issued, that we've relied on, that we've, are spending money on, that we recognize that and we grandfather those in. Mr. Lagori already said, we understand the concerns, we understand the managed growth, but we would ask to take into account the permits that are issued and the reliance on those and the money that we've spent.
Thank you, Mr. Michaelai. Ms. Urbicite?
Thank you. Lori Urbicite with Wyoming Horse Racing. The one thing I do want to point out that I think we have missed sharing with, maybe we've shared it individually with members, but I don't think we've said it publicly. So the facilities that we built here in Cheyenne, the Swan Ranch property, and the one that we are currently building out in Evanston, those are for, the point is to attract tourists from out of state and take their money, not our own people's money. But with that being said, we also are planning expansions of those, not just of the gaming, but of entertainment, a convention center, a hotel. These are long-term plans that we have had in place for quite some time. And again, it's a business decision. Here's how many machines you can have permitted. Here's what you can afford to build. So we would ask you to take that into account. I won't speak on the zoning because I think the bill you just passed was much better. I think that addresses local concerns much more clearly than the zoning issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Urbacate. Committee, any questions for either of them? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Lean. And for Mr. McAuliffe, if we permitted for all the future permits, would it be beneficial to give every track that many permits? How would you, so you have 13 or what'd you say, 1,800 permits you're permitted for? You haven't built out. Would that be, if we grandfather you in there, then shouldn't we give those to everybody?
Mr. Michael.
Certainly, there should be a path for new entrants into the marketplace to get permits, right? We're not the one proposing a cap, but I do think that is something that you should consider. I think there should be a path that everybody has an equal chance to get permits. So, yes, I think there should be some path to everybody to get permits. Speaking for Wyoming Horse Racing is just respect our investments that we've made. I would also just point out that I've heard again, this idea that people are getting these permits and hoarding them. Again, with the 145 bill that we just passed, I think we put in place a pretty good stopgap for that, because if we're not building out and making use of those permits, there will be the authority to revoke those. So our plan is to move forward and to continue to build out and to use those permits. And if we're not, there's a mechanism to pull those back.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Further questions? Thank you very much. Further public comment? Is there more online? Welcome, Mr. Ridgway.
Good afternoon, committee members. Kyle Ridgway, president of 307 Horse Racing and Wyoming Downs. I'll try to keep this short because I testified about this bill at the September meeting and don't have any major changes to those comments. I would point out that the population bill related to the caps on numbers of properties was not our bill or my bill necessarily. That was a bill that was actually crafted by JAC and I think came out of committee last December. So when we all were asked to bring ideas forward for what we can do as far as sideboards are, we shared that bill as one that JAC had put out. So certainly wasn't our bill or Wyoming Downs' bill necessarily, just as a point of clarification. I think the difficulty here is, as Senator Kolb described, we're not in 2013 anymore, where we can do something like Kentucky did or Virginia did, where at the outset, they had a set playing field for how they wanted this to work, with the site only being at the track or only so many sites that were off or a machine cap. And so the reason the local control bill that was passed we favored is because it balanced the interests of due process for existing permittees and new entrants. And so on any cap bill, it's difficult to balance those interests without some sort of grandfathering provision, because the existing folks who, for example, 307's been here for 5 years, Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing have been here for well over 10 years and invested tens of millions of dollars. And so to say from a due process perspective with a cap number that they have to go backwards has constitutional concerns, which is why the grandfathering's being raised. I don't believe the grandfathering discussion has anything to do with favoring one entrant over another. It's to make sure there's constitutional due process protections for permits and licenses that have already been granted. Which is why we worked hard over, 2 or 3 years in the local control bill to balance those interests. So with any cap, you have to balance those interests because the reality is you have a number of entities that have invested tens of $millions and will continue to do that and already have licenses and permits that are granted by the state. And you have to balance those with what level of growth do you want from a new permittee? Exactly what Mr. Michael I just said. So the concerns we have with a cap bill or a number bill is just to ensure that there's appropriate, due process and adequate protection and grandfathering for what already exists because of the investments that have been made in the licenses that are here. It's not a preference thing, it's a due process thing. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgway. Any questions for Mr. Ridgway? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Lee. Mr. Ridgway, how many permits are you permitted for? Future permits, what's your total amount?
Mr. Ridgway?
307 has one that is construction is almost completed on for a Green River property. I believe Wyoming Downs has two, one that is currently under construction. And one that we received a county approval for after years of work in the last couple months.
Follow up?
I'm sorry, I wasn't very clear. How many machines, not how many facilities, how many machines are you permitted for at the maximum? Your future machines and what you have now?
So 307 is permitted for, it's either 1,200 or 1,300. I'm going off the top of my head. I don't have my laptop in front of me. And it may be short by 50 machines. It may have 1,250 instead of 1,300 with the one property that's under construction. Wyoming Downs, I believe when it's complete, I think it has 1,800 now. That includes the 600 that are for the border site that's under construction. And we have a second facility that we received a partial approval for that we're talking to the Gaming Commission about. So I believe that they'll get close to 2,500-ish at their max, Wyoming Downs will. And 307 will have approximately 1,300 permitted.
Total for Wyoming Downs?
Correct.
25.
Correct. I mean, again, I'm going off the top of my head, but I believe that's right, including the new border facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgway. Further questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your time today and your testimony.
Thank you.
Any further public comment on this legislation? Any further online comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on this legislation. Committee. Is there a motion on the floor? The bill's been moved and seconded, moved by Webb, seconded by Johnson. We'll go through the bill one page at a time. Any potential amendments, feel free to speak up. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. We're going to go back to page 2. Representative Johnson.
Well, this is your amendment. This is correct.
That is a proposed.
A proposed amendment. Page 2, lines 11 through 21, delete entirely and insert B. So this is the handout draft.
The written amendment, you'd
The
like to
written
propose the
amendment,
written
yes,
amendment?
the written amendment.
Is there a second to propose the written amendment? For all those that are curious, it is the proposed amendment that was out here on the table.
Suppose I should go grab that.
Yeah, it's oh,
We can
Madam,
read it for you.
Madam
I can-
Co-Chair.
Yeah, I can give you a,
Could we have it dispersed maybe possibly next time sooner?
it should be in emails as well and as
I
in
did
the
look, I did,
update
yeah.
online version.
I have this problem with my email. It's bombarded emails about libraries.
Yeah, we're getting over library emails from yesterday.
Thank you.
Where'd you send it? So. this item?
They just updated the gaming book with it. The online book.
Oh, good. That's why I didn't know it was there. On the agenda, you mean?
For those online that may not be able to see it, it's page 1, line 4. After rule making, delete the balance of line. Page 1, line 5, delete the line through facilities. Page 2, lines 11 through 21, delete entirely. And insert, section B would be simulcasting may be conducted off the permitted premises of a live parimutuel event only if approval is granted by the governing body of the city or town in which the simulcasting will be conducted, or if the location is outside the corporate limits of the city or town by the Board of County Commissioners of the county in which the simulcasting will be conducted. Page 5, line 1, after permits, insert conducted within the corporate limits of any city or town. Page 5, lines 20 to 22, delete entirely. Page 6, lines 1 through 13, delete entirely. Page 7, line 1, delete or local. And page 7, line 2, delete zoning regulation. The committee has the amendment in front of them. It's been moved by Johnson. Is there a second?
1 second.
Seconded by Webb for discussion purposes. Any discussion on the amendment?
I have a Chair. Could you please explain to the task force what was your intention by this amendment?
Thank you, Co-Chair Kolb. Do you want to take that up?
Yeah, thank you.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Lean and Co-Chairman Pope. We have seen the folly of our ways going for zoning, so we would like to allow local control a more direct path. And I think that these amendments do that.
For further clarification, it deletes the zoning from the bill and then just adds cities and towns to the current language that is in statute already. And it keeps the caps and the build out requirement to be able to get more permitting.
Well, Madam Co-Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment to the amendment and insert the language that was used in the other bill draft that we just got through as it is appropriate for the cities and counties to cooperate during the process of a approval. We need to extract that out of there. Just take that language out and substitute it for some of the language here. That's that's my intent of the amendment to the amendment. It's critical for me that either we deal with this in this manner or, you know, I'm a no vote on it because it has to at least have the agreement that we have between WAM and the County Commissioner Association Board, because contrary to what people's belief may be, without those groups are pretty important. They represent a lot of people. And I think we have to take deference to what that agreement was, because I think it will help, even though I think this is a different way of skinning the cat as it may be. I think it's important that we try to improve this proposed amendment. That's why I'm proposing to amend the language to match the approval process between the counties and the city and the other bill draft.
Just for clarification from Ellis, so does that look like the permitting language, or does that look like a specific reference, for instance, page 3, lines 14 to page 4, line 13? Of LSO 145.
What I'm interpreting is that. Excuse me.
And thank you for being mind readers.
I believe what I'm interpreting is that language that's in your version 26 LSO 0145 0.6, where on page 3, you have a paragraph 1 and a paragraph 2 that talks about if simulcasting is going to be in a city or town, it shall be subject to the city or town's approval. If it'll be in the county, it shall be subject to the county's approval. Subject to paragraph 3, I envision you would similarly have a subject to subparagraph C, and that language is on your other bill, page 3 and on to page 4. And it'll take up about a page of text, but it goes through that if the simulcasting will be conducted within the corporate limits or any city or town, then the county would have an opportunity for review and comment and objection, review and objection. Similarly, if it's within the unincorporated areas, within a half mile of the corporate limits of a city, the city would have that authority to review and object. There were timelines in there and written findings that would have to be made about the land use, public safety, taxation, about what the basis of the objections are, the timeline, 30 days, and the requirement that it be on a local agenda. So I'm understanding what you're discussing is an amendment to sort of say subject to subparagraph C and bring in that whole working together and review and objection concept.
Just a point of clarification, would it leave out the permit process or would it include the permit language?
Thank you for the clarification. I don't interpret you to have moved over any of the other revocation, application process, notice procedures, et cetera. Simply that approval aspect, giving the entity that's not the direct approving authority some ability to review and object as was outlined in this other bill draft.
And to that,
Chair Colt?
yeah, thank you for that explanation, John. I think that was my intent. I just wanted to add that this is not a veto from the other organizations, say city or county, when the one is located within the county. It's an ability to comment from the other entity. That's all it is. It's not a veto power. That entity, that city or county where the said activity is going to take place, they have sole jurisdiction over the outcome of that question. In other words, it's their choice, but they have to take comments from the other body. And there's very complicated, but reasons are there's a relationship between cities and counties, and it's different all over the state, right? This just allows a comment period for the other adjoining entity to say something about what is going on within their local area. So just to be clear, it's not a veto authority. It's just a commenting ability. That's what it amounts to.
So the amendment to the amendment would be to strike lines 8 through 14 of the current proposed amendment and add the language that Ms. Tamra reviewed for us out of 26 LSO 0145. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Craigo. Further discussion on this amendment? Question being called. All those in favor of striking lines 8 through 14 on the proposed amendment and inserting the language from 26 LSO 0145 on page 3 that Ms. Tamra referenced, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? This does pass. So it's adopted. So we're back on the amendment that would remove zoning, add in the language for working together for cities and towns from working draft 145.6 and take out zoning, leaving in a cap. Leaving it in the cap, yes. Further, Senator Craigo.
Discussion, Madam Chairman. I don't have an amendment.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, because really we had two options coming in today, right? We had the original, what I'm calling the local control bill from last year we've worked on, made amendments to, and then we have the zoning proposal, which we brought forward from the last meeting. And then this amendment would just get rid of the zoning and create a separate local control bill, I guess, local control B, if we have A and B. My question, I guess, for the bringer of the amendment and supporters of the amendment, because I'm not sure I am one of those, is why? I mean, what's the difference between this and what we just did? What's the advantages? Because if we're just talking about limits, I mean, I think we were all willing to talk about that. We could either do a separate bill on limits, or we could stick limits in the bill we just passed earlier. So I guess my question is why? What's the advantage of this? And if it's about limits, can we consider putting limits somewhere else or doing a standalone bill on limits alone?
Any more discussion? Representative Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Craigo. I think that we need limits. This would still allow us to put limits in here. It would give the majority of the people here what they want, local control. And I think we need to just move this bill and move on to the limits and talk about that. I think we're trying to, I would rather have two bills that we can discuss than just one in later conversations.
Senator Craigo.
Follow-up discussion, Madam Chairman. So I still, I guess my question is, what's the difference? What are we trying to gain with this bill versus the last bill? What do you see as the advantages to this proposal you're bringing to us?
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we'll be able to put caps onto this bill. So this bill will have local control and caps.
Without
Be
the
in one
permitting
bill,
process.
And yes, so.
Um,
And that way we're only gonna have two bills. We can discuss both of them through the process.
Senator Craigo.
Madam Chairman, maybe this question's for you, because you said without the permitting process. What does that mean? What are you referring to without the permitting process?
This legislation in front of us now, when we took out the zoning and then just adopted the amendment that brings in the ability for them to take care of business within their own jurisdiction, there's not a permitting process there. It's just the ability for them to say yes or no. That's the biggest difference between the two of these is the zoning and the caps versus the permitting process. And so I think the intent of the amendment originally was to remove the zoning and potentially take it just to a caps bill.
Thank you.
But this is not just a caps bill.
Right.
Uh-huh. All right, so we're back on the bill again, or we're
Oh,
still.
we're still on the
amendments.
amendment. Clear as mud.
Well, we're on the amendment, okay.
So the legislation in front of us has a current amendment that brings in language now from 0145 regarding local permitting authorities, but then still keeps the cap on the live tracks for the HHR machines with the build out requirement that they need to get those in place and functional before they ask for more permits. Further discussion on the amendment to the bill. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
That has failed. Further amendments to the legislation? Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Just what I would like to do, if we're going to talk about limits caps, I would like to, and this is going to be a lift for the LSO, convert this bill draft into a caps bill. Then we talk about a limit on caps, strictly a limit on caps. And on that topic, I think we're going to have to, in order of fairness, issue a cap, which is this might not be beneficial to us. If you think this through, we put a cap in, it's going to be a rush on everyone to run out and get licenses for machines. The only legal way that I'm aware of, and this is an LSO question, is if there's a maximum, say it's 20, what I don't know the news number, 2,500, let's just say 2,500, whatever the maximum cap is right now with people that have existing permits in total, not the ones they've executed on, but the total pot, the total amount they have that they could get because they're authorized to have those many machines, right? I believe we have to treat everybody the same. We can't just go pick a winner and loser. If we pick some 2,500, it has to apply to everybody with a live track. I don't, and this is the question to LSO. Is that true or not? Can we treat people differently because they only have, at this point, if we have a cap and we say the cap is, say what their current licenses is, like say it's 1,000 and someone else has 2,000. Is that legal to do that? To put caps that are different for people who are effectively doing the same thing?
Ms. Tamara.
Madam Chair and Mr. Co-Chairman, I think that's a really good question, and I'm sorry, I don't have a black and white yes or no for you. It would depend a lot upon the circumstances and the way the legislation is written, but that is the concept of grandfathering generally that we often do put in legislation. In this specific legislation, we've specified applicability, and that's on pages 6 and 7. It's the section 3, allowing a simulcasting permit holder to operate under the terms and conditions of their existing simulcasting permit until they go up for renewal of a permit. And so that's attempted to say, let's at least not affect existing permit holders' rights for the terms and conditions that have been issued. There's a couple options when you're trying to not affect existing rights. You could raise that number to be 2,000 that you know is above, or that you believe will be above the number that's in place or that's approved as of the effective date of that legislation. So that's just kind of practically trying to make sure that you're not excluding anyone. Otherwise, yes, we've certainly had places in statute where we attempt to say that this will not affect anyone's existing permits that have been issued on or before the effective date of this act. But that, that might be a right that you want to restrict, where if they go out of business, they can't sell their grandfathered permits that are above the 1,200 cap, that they phase out in those ways. But certainly their rights and their property and the items that they've invested based on what they've been issued under existing law will be affected by new legislation if the number is below where they're at right now.
Thank you, Ms. Tamara. I might ask for anyone in the room, is there any updated numbers from the ones that I have mentioned earlier today, whether it's the director or any operator in the room that could give us a better idea on where you're at with your current permitted HHR machines? Director Laramendi, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so the current numbers that were effective as of, this one's 10/4. For Wyoming Downs LLC, they have been approved for 2,310 terminals. They currently have 1,146 active and in use, with 2 locations under construction. Wyoming Horse Racing has been approved for 3,004 machines. They currently have 1,032 terminals on site and in play, with 2 locations under construction. Make that 3 locations under construction, because one of those, the Swan Ranch property has expansion plans for a large amount of terminals. 307 Horse Racing has been approved for 1,369 terminals, and they're currently operating at 1,043 terminals with 1 location under construction.
Thank you, Director. Are there any further amendments to the legislation? I don't believe we finished going through the bill, but you have it in front of you. If we haven't got to a page where you're looking to amend, my question would be, is there an amendment that we've missed that you're looking to have to the legislation?
Madam Chair.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, so my proposed amendment is to take this bill and rewrite it for a cap bill, strictly a cap bill. And then we would, so I guess that's my proposed amendment, making this a cap bill. And then having a discussion about what a proper number is. Then a discussion about the ramifications of making a cap bill. Is that really in our best interest to cause a rush over to the gaming commission for machines. I think there's liability that we need to discuss if we're talking about caps. Caps, and a lot of conversation. I think it's worthy of a discussion. We got a little bit of time to discuss it. That's my proposed amendment, is to work a bill that is a cap bill from this language.
Is there a second? Seconded by Craigo.
Purposes of discussion.
Yep, for purposes of discussion.
Noted to be a soft second.
There's an amendment on the floor to give LSO an opportunity to make this a cap bill. Moved by Senator Craigo, or seconded by Senator Craigo, moved by Senator Kolb, in which we could take a break and give them an opportunity to kind of look through the language and see what that looks like. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That does carry. At this time, we'll move for 20 minutes.
Madam Chair, I can put this in written amendment form for you, but I think that all you're going to have left is on page 3 and on page 4 of the bill, the changes to 1125-104 M. Those would be the only changes you would have left to existing statute. You would still want to keep your applicability section in your effective date and your authority to promulgate rules. So you would want to keep on page 6 and 7, section 2, section 3, and section 4. But really, the rest of the bill, all that's left is your amendments to existing statute 1125-104 M.
Could we have you print that for everyone in the room just so we can carry it forward and look at it? And then look at a proper number discussion for the caps?
And would
So-
you like to see that in bill draft form or amendment form?
Just written, however, whatever's easiest for you written down so that we can read it. So we'll take a 20-minute break and give LSO an opportunity to take care of this, and we'll reconvene about, is it really 3:30?
Yeah, it is.
3:50. Thank you for your patience, and thank you to LSO for working in haste for us. Ms. Tamra, if you'll just walk us through this amendment.
Members of the committee, what I've done with this amendment is just, if you recall, we're on 26 LSO 168 parimutuel simulcasting amendments. What this amendment would do is it proposes deleting the entire bill and replacing it with the amendment that's in front of you. And what's left in the amendment in front of you is just a fairly narrow bill limited to parimutuel wagering terminals. The act would relate to parimutuel wagering terminals, amending requirements for simulcasting permits as specified, requiring rulemaking specifying applicability. That section 1 would be all that's left of the bill, is an amendment to section 1 that goes in and amends 1125-104M. This is the provision directing the commission to adopt rules. One, same as you saw in the bill draft. It's just those rules for the number of live horse racing or parimutuel event days. Then creating the new requirement in paragraph 2, exactly as it was in the bill. It's that no applicant be authorized to operate additional parimutuel wagering terminals at any location if they're already authorized to operate one that's not in use. And then B, limiting operation to not more than 1,200 parimutuel wagering terminals in the state for each live flat track that they operate on. Then within the amendment, section 2 continues the direction to promulgate rules to the Gaming Commission. Section 3 continues the applicability section to not affect existing permit conditions and rights. And section 4 is the split effective date to allow those rules to be promulgated. There is another change for your consideration of the amendment. It's on page 2 within a staff comment, lines 5 through 19. And that would, it's probably going to need some more technical work and some review, but essentially to grandfather in existing permit holders to the number of terminals that they are authorized to operate as of July 1st, 2026. For those existing terminals, if they operate above 1,000, 1,200, if they're approved, to operate above over 1,200 permits, they'd be allowed to continue operation or allowed to continue to have those permits, but they could not be sold, transferred, or assigned. And if there's a material change in their membership or their ownership, then they would no longer be able to keep that grandfathered in excess permits above the maximum that this bill draft establishes. So again, this amendment is just a sort of takes your existing bill draft and strips it of the provisions that you would like to see removed or that you're proposing to be amended out. But it's all in front of you here, so that way you can kind of see it in one place and hopefully simplifies things somewhat.
We appreciate your work on this and that you did it in a timely manner. We know we kind of put you on the spot and we apologize for that, but we thank you for your diligence. Committee, any questions? Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And this might be a question for the director, Tamara. I'm not sure. Live flat track, is that a specific definition within the statute? And if so, what is it?
Ms. Tamra or Director Laramendi, whichever wants to answer it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That is a terminology that's used in rules of the Gaming Commission. I don't believe it's defined in Wyoming statutes, but that was drafted to match, I believe, the existing rules. And maybe we can get confirmation of that.
Follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Follow up, Director, what's the definition of live flat track? And does that apply to all of the tracks we currently have in the state? Is there a different kind of track if someone came in and built a different type of track that they wouldn't obviously be subject to this proposed statute?
Director?
Madam Chair, Senator Craigo, so live flat track or flat tracks not defined in rural, that's the common term used for horse racing tracks that is just a flat horse or a flat track used for the purposes of horse racing. So all of our tracks are live flat tracks.
Thank you. Further questions for LSO or for the director on this condensed proposed amendment? Thank you very much. We did adopt this amendment when we asked Tamara to draft it, just so we're clear, for myself and for you. So I do ask if it's a friendly amendment to the co-chair to be able to adopt lines 5 to 19 into this legislation, if he would consider that friendly.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a second? Moved by Lean, seconded by Webb. Any discussion on the amendment of adopting lines 5 to 19?
Do that.
Senator Craigo?
You're talking 5 to 19 on page 2, Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir. We need to adopt it if it's a live friendly amendment.
It's already been adopted. No, I agreed to it. Then it's adopted in the amendment that I first proposed. So
As this is our current bill in front of us, and it has taken a substantial change, are there any comments in the room?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Affie Ellis representing Cowboy Racing. I think our biggest concern with moratorium was just the inequitable treatment among operators. I think this gets us with the language added in the paragraph C on page 2 of the amendment. Our concerns are an equity one again. I think you just heard the director talk about how many approvals each other operator has been approved for. Wyoming Downs, 2,310 machines. Wyoming Horse Racing, 3,004 machines. And then 307 Horse Racing, 1,369. And so we would be placed at the least competitive advantage of among the other operators at 1,200 machines. And so, Madam Chair, if the committee were to move forward with the cap bill, I think it would need to be at the minimum of what the other operators are all entitled to. And if you look at those, that would be Wyoming Horse Racing, who have 3,004 machines. And so, short of that, Madam Chair, we just are looking for some equal treatment, and then we just can't agree to a lesser amount, especially the private investment that my client's been made into their privately owned track. Again, millions of dollars being poured into this investment compared to leasing a track, which we think is a different investment, not financially insignificant, but not to the tune of what my client has spent on their private investment.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Any further comments, Mr. Edwards? No? Questions from the committee? Representative or Senator McEwen?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If we were to bump this limit up, we would actually put everybody on an even footing. Boy, that's a screw up. An even footing, and then there wouldn't be any future concerns about fairness and equity. But then on the other hand, is that too many machines?
Sure. Ms.
So
Ellis. Madam Chair, I think the senator makes a good point. 3,000 times 4 operators is 12,000 machines. That's a lot of machines. One prior version of this bill limited the number of live permit track holders to 4, or 5, I think it was. And so I think that's something that's kind of missing from this equation. We have talked so much about gaming. We have really strayed from talking too about the live horse racing component of this. I think this is a question for you all to decide. Looking at the map, and we've all looked at that map, Casper, Natrona County has a significant number of machines, second to Cheyenne and Laramie County. So if you wanted to bring live horse racing to Casper, it would make sense maybe to add that to 5 permittees. But then we're talking 15,000 machines in the state. So this is the rub, right? This is the difficulty in that. I don't know that you want to go that high. I think there might be some delineation of, again, we've suggested treating privately owned tracks, giving them more of a favored status rather than lease tracks. But that's a policy. If you really want to stop things and have it be fair, then 4 live permit track holders, they each get 3,004 games. That's it. Like that's truly like the fairest moratorium I think that you can divine. Other than that, we just can't get on board with something that gives us 1,200 games when our competitors have more than twice that amount, or one of our competitors.
When is the last time we had live horse racing in Casper that met the 16 races in a season? And maybe that's for Mr. Larramendy.
Mr. Larramendy, might you be able to answer that?
Madam Chair, Senator McEwen. So the last time they ran races at Central Wyoming Fair was in 2018.
Follow up?
I guess I'm confused with all the legislation we're doing today to tie this into horse racing. It would seem the second largest place with all the machines doesn't have any horse racing. So we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth, aren't we?
Any comments, Mr. Larramendy?
Madam Chair, Senator McEwen. So a lot of the reason for that is the track conditions. That's a county-owned track owned by Natrona County, Central Wyoming Fairgrounds. That track is not, without massive upgrades and investment, it's not conducive to run safe quarter horse racing or thoroughbred racing currently. It would take large investments to make that track or bring that track up to a safety standard. And I mean, it's available for an operator to go talk to the Natrona County to work that out with them. But as it stands today, it wouldn't be safe to run.
Thank you, Director. Further questions? Senator McEwen.
But the machines are safe, so we kept them. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Madam Chair, I think the point is made though. The talk of the 1,200 machines being inadequate because of these other rights. We've heard I think some conflicting or conflating views on what these like what your true ownership or vesting of rights is. The way I read the cap bill was nothing would preclude, one of the other operators, if they wanted to earn more machines, if you will, to say, we're going to go to Casper and whatever, we're going to work with the county and maybe that's going to take a couple $1 million to get that track up to speed. But to do that, then we're allowed to bring more machines to properties, the Swan Ranch or, other facilities that are being built in Evanston and toward the Colorado border here in Cheyenne. So I don't know that that's necessarily a prohibition because that's, if you don't limit the number of tracks, then somebody could very well say, well, we're going to go look at Casper, make those investments there, lease that, and then you get 1,200 more machines, and then you're closer to that 3,000 amount. So just some food for thought. And I think the other thing that we're also neglecting is, when we talk about cowboy racing, and we've said this to many of you privately, Mr. Edwards and his family, they're in the development business. They know how to move dirt. They know how to build things. Can they build a gaming facility? Absolutely. But some of this requires some expertise and knowledge. My client here has talked about bringing in good operators, reputable operators who know how to run horse racing, who know how to run gaming facilities. If he had the choice to say, we actually don't want to build any facilities, one of his proposed locations in Cheyenne would require massive amounts of renovation, get the kitchen up to code to bring that space to life. And so in an ideal scenario, if we were entitled to 1,200 games or machines, could we work out an agreement with one of our competitors at the Swan Ranch or Wyoming Downs to say, hey, we know you want to build this big casino. We have machines to lease you. And so I just want to throw those ideas out there. And I don't think that that's been fully vetted of just because the cap is at 1,200, I don't think is necessarily a bar for those operators to be locked in at that number. I think there's a little bit of play about what the market could sustain. And again, if you add live horse racing in places like Casper, then you get more machines, or you could approach Cowboy Racing and say, hey, do you want to build gaming facilities or do you want to lease machines? And those are all really, I think, positive ways that if we were to enter the market, rather than looking at us in a negative light, maybe they'd be more welcoming of our application to bring live horse racing to Cheyenne. So that was some of our thinking behind the cap amount. But I am sensitive. But again, we just can't support a bill that gives us a massively competitive disadvantage.
Thank you for your comments. Senator McEwen.
And I'm not sure who I asked this. When I was at my revenue committee meeting, I could ask them. How much of the purse money, as we call it, right, generated from those machines get put back into the track in Casper? And where does it go if there's no purse and no horse racing? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator McEwen, I think I can answer your question. Zero money goes into the track in Caspers. There's not currently any live tracks run there, and every operator that has machines there puts that money back into their own purses.
Thank you.
Any further comments on this adopted piece of new short legislation? Committee, any amendments to the amended piece of legislation? Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman Lean. I would, if we're going to cap these machines per track at 1,200, I'm going to say, I'm just going to throw this out there now. Cowboy Racing is not going to get their 1,200 machines up and running in time. Some of you other operators have build outs and money provided financing for new buildings. And the best thing that could happen for us here is for you to agree to use those machines and fill out your buildings that you have financing on. Just work a deal between yourselves. I think what we're doing is we're going to end up telling you how to run your businesses. We don't want to do that. We think that's up to you. But we think I should hope that you would get along and do this for the goodness of horse racing in Wyoming. It doesn't matter what track the money goes to, it goes to a Wyoming track. And any horse racing in Wyoming that has a higher purse is going to help all of you. So I would just ask you all to consider this amendment that you allow leasing between yourselves to fill out your caps. Is that? So this leasing among operators. The Wyoming Gaming Commission may allow a holder of either, well, we don't have two classes of permits, to enter to a lease agreement with another permit holder to operate their historic pari-mutuel event electronic devices.
Point of order. Point of order. Are you proposing an amendment?
Yes,
Yes.
there is.
If you have, is there someone who seconded said amendment? I missed all this,
I don't know.
if there was.
I'm just telling you what the amendment is.
Well, I know,
now.
but you have to.
Okay.
You
All
go
right.
through the procedure and,
Okay.
ask for, I have an amendment and say what it does
Okay.
and get a second. We'll discuss it if that happens.
I'm new here.
Please proceed to give us the amendment. The amendment would be to,
To allow the Wyoming Gaming Commission to allow a holder of
to allow the Wyoming
No.
Gaming Commission to lease machines between operators.
yeah, to allow the permit to operate their historic pari-mutuel event electronic devices in whole or in part upon Wyoming Gaming Commission's approval. So
Is there a
we-
second for the motion?
I'll second for discussion purposes. We need to explore it.
Moved by Johnson, seconded by Webb. Please proceed, Representative Johnson.
well, when we started this, I just want to say that we thought that we could put a cap on all these machines. Well, that's not fair to anybody. You already have financing available. You're looking at expanding throughout the state. So I think that if we put a cap on these machines, of 1,200 or 1,500 or whatever per tract. Work between yourselves, a lease agreement, come to an agreement, and we can all get along. And that's what I'm hoping for with this amendment, that you will, any machines available that aren't being used now could be leased out to another holder to fill in their spaces. So that's why.
Further comments on the amendment? Questions, concerns? Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, a concern would be an understatement. So now we're talking about monetizing, like little mini liquor licenses that we're gonna sell and trade on the open market. So now we've just blown up a problem and it's gone nuclear. This is absolutely the worst thing I've heard. Worst thing I've heard. This is what I was trying to avoid by having a trade of, say, a gaming license between operators, because it would become a commodity unto itself, just like a liquor license is a commodity. And I absolutely am opposed to making this a commodity. And to say that we're going to have an operator that can sublease and then trade this ability out there in the free market is if that's not telling other businesses what to do, I don't know what is. These licenses are uniquely given in the state of Wyoming for the purposes of benefiting our state, not to be traded as a commodity, not to be a tool to make money. And I just don't want to hear. I just think it's a really bad course change of direction. And if you talk about, I don't see how this has got any legs on it. No one's going to allow this to happen, to become a commodity, to be traded. I just don't know why it's even, I mean, we can talk about the pros and cons of it. And my opposition is it has many downsides. To monetize something like this is just, I think, a terrible direction to take. It puts the value not in the state of Wyoming, but into an operator who can just open up their own place and operate their, HHR machines. Nothing stops that from happening. They can do all that. This is merely a tool to make money without doing that. And I'm opposed to it. And those are my reasons. Thanks for my comment.
Thank you, Senator Cole. Further comments? I might offer a few that with the simple amendment opens a whole new door of problems. I just want to know who would pay the taxes, who would pay the purse money, what is the monetary value on each machine, how does the re-permitting process work? Those would just be my questions moving forward with being able to sublet machines.
Thank you, Chairman, for that question. I think that was up to the operators of the machines. These machines are already a commodity. They're a high value commodity. It doesn't matter where they go, who operates them. But the end goal is to improve horse racing in the state of Wyoming. If these machines are leased out separate places, that purse money would still go to that track. So taxes, who cleans them, the whole operation would be between operators. We shouldn't be involved in that. We should allow them to have the free market system to work the way it is supposed to work and just let them work it out. Thank you.
Further concerns, questions, comments? Is everyone clear on what they're voting on for the amendment?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I think this is a whole new segue, right, to a conversation we're trying to have. I think it involves to have some of these operators, if they wish to come up and talk about this, because we're talking about something that directly involves them. I think it's only right that they have an opportunity. I mean, this is because we're trying to do the best we can with the problem. And it's up to you, Madam Chairman, you run the meeting, but my
Senator Crago.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, and all due respect, Mr. Co-Chairman, I think maybe we should just vote. We might short circuit about an hour's worth of testimony based on the general consensus of this body setting up here. I don't think we need to hear
Okay.
testimony.
Well, then I'd call for the question.
Question being called on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
This amendment has failed. Further amendments to the legislation? Senator McEwen, do you have one?
I would like to go on page 139. I'd like to change the permit holder shall not operate more than 2,500 machines.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Would you like to explain?
I think it gets us closer to putting, once again, everybody on an even footing. Cleans things up. And it puts us right at a good place. So we're not looking at legislation down the road as people grow and shrink. I also believe in a free market. If they bring in too many machines, as we've seen in some places, they'll just sit idle. So that's where I'm coming from on that, Madam Chairman.
Further discussion? Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I partially agree with my good colleague here. I personally, I was going to bring an amendment to just take us to the top limit, which is 3,004 machines. Because that's what we know someone in this, in this room has invested that amount in that many machines. And that would be the limit. They would, it comes with its own problems. I mean, I think we heard plenty of testimony. That's going to be a lot of machines in the state of Wyoming, but so is 2,500. I just think we eliminate some of the other issues that come along with not matching the top number by going to the top number. And so, if this is what, 2,500 is definitely better than 1,200, it eliminates all of the the problems for most everybody except one operator, but it's still not really grandfathering in the last operator. It is to some extent. You can't, essentially you would never be able to sell your business with those many machines. The permits would not transfer based on your amendment on page 2. And I think that's, I don't know. We wouldn't really need that amendment, to be honest, if we matched the top number, but just for discussion purposes, just throwing that out there. That's my thoughts.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Lean. Just a question for Senator Craigo. If we allow these 2,500 machines, there's one operator that's going to be behind. I would like to extend the time frame to allow them to build out to more than just July 1st, 2026. I think we should give them 5 years. I'm saying that all of these machines that are spoken for now, they've been in the works for years and they have financing for buildings and a lot of other things. So I think if we can give them machines, but that doesn't really do them any good if they can't build out to them. So that's be my request to change that date. Thank you.
Senator Craigo.
Madam Chairman, and I don't know, I've read enough words this week. I might be missing something, but I guess I didn't see in there where they have to have the machines built out by 2026. It just goes into effect in 2026. They just have a cap on how many actual machines they can apply and receive a permit for. That could be, I mean, and someone else could come in and start up the Casper track and go get another 3,000 machines, and they would have however long they need to get to 3,000 machines. There's no time frame by which they have to have their permits acquired. It might be 20 years from now, the way I read the legislation, but if someone smarter than me can tell me if I'm reading that wrong, but I don't see a time limit.
Ms. Tamra, might we include you on this conversation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think in the bill draft that's before you, the amendment in the form of a bill draft, that's exactly right, as stated by Senator Craigo, that this number, whether it's 1,200 or 2,500 or a different number, that will go into effect and that will be the cap as of July 1st, 2026, unless you choose a different effective date. But as drafted, that's the effective date. All operators, new and old, would be limited to machines as of July 1st, 2026, upon the number you choose. if, I think you've accepted as a friendly amendment, the subsection C that's suggested by Co-Chairman Lean, which authorizes that excess number to be grandfathered in per the permit holder, that does track to July 1st, 2026. And so, yes, there is some inherent unfairness in that some operators have been in place and will probably have more, or they might be in a position to have more than 1,200 or 2,500 or 3,000, whatever it is. They could, go request an additional 3,000 right now. Whatever number exists as of July 1st, 2026, there might be entities, but they're all treated the same. Whatever they are, however long they've been in business, they have until July 1st, 2026, and then that number would be their cap, and would grandfather them in at that point.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yeah,
Further conversation?
I call for the question.
Senator McEwen?
I probably need to withdraw the
The menu?
the amendment. I'm not feeling 100% today. And remove it at 3,004.
Just amend your amendment for 3,000.
Does the second agree that we move it to 3,004?
Yes.
So the amendment before us is that we move the machine cap to 3,004 for every live flat track that operates with 16 race days.
And I believe that's an amendment to the amendment.
And your second agreed, so we'll call it a friendly.
Okay.
All those in favor of moving the cap to 3,004, say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. No. That is adopted. So this legislation now caps at 3,004 machines per live flat track. That you have to build out your machines before you can ask for more permits, and that you are grandfathered in if you have above that. But if you are to sell the business, that it does take away those above 3,004 machines. Further amendments to the legislation?
Call for the question.
Please call the roll on the legislation.
On 26 LSO 0168 as amended, Senator Craig.
No.
Senator McEwen,
Aye.
Representative Johnson,
Aye.
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Cole,
No.
Co-Chairman Lean,
Aye.
Madam Co-Chairman, you have 4 aye, 2 no.
We'll give it a whirl at Management Council. The last piece of our agenda today is to vote on the moratorium legislation and to see if there's any amendments to be offered to it. So we're going to revisit 26 LSO 152. Is there a motion from the committee?
Move the proposed 26 LSO 152.
Moved by Kolb, seconded by Lean. Are there any amendments to the moratorium bill? I might offer one before you. It was the grocery stores taking up skills-based games has brought to our attention a proposal of an amendment. It's printed before us. The biggest change would be to add skills-based gaming to this moratorium, but in the definitions, we're going to add I'm just going to read this section that makes the change. Its establishment means a single physical place of business that operates as a truck stop, smoke shop, or that the licensed or permitted to sell alcoholic liquor or malt beverages for consumption on the licensed of permitted premises under Wyoming statutes 12-2-203G, 12-4-201, 12-4-301, 12-4-401, 12-4-407, 12-4-413, and 12-4-414, or 12-4-415, excuse me. That's the premise of the change. Senator Craigo.
Madam Chairman, just one little typographical error. I think where you said, where it says of on the, in the red language, I think that should be or, licensed or permitted premises. Just so we're clear, because it's a little complicated without that.
Ms. Tamara?
That's correct. That is a typographical issue that can be corrected.
Thank you, Senator Craigo. For consumption on the licensed or permitted premises. Any discussion from the committee? Looking for the question. All in favor of the adoption of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been adopted and moved into the moratorium bill. Any further amendments to the bill?
Question.
Question being called for the moratorium. Karen, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. On 26 LSO 0152 as amended, Senator Craigo,
No.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Representative Johnson,
No.
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Kolb,
No.
Co-Chairman Lean.
Aye.
Madam Co-Chairman, you have 2 aye, 4 no.
Seeing as how that is not moving on to management council, I do, as we're going to take committee directives, I myself would like to ask that we bring forward a skills-based piece of legislation. Senator Craigo?
Madam Chairman, I was just gonna suggest that if we wanted to deal with the skill games issue that's, arisen recently, that we literally just turn this amendment into a bill draft. And I think, we've heard plenty of testimony on it. I don't think there's any objections here to doing something along those lines. So echo your sentiments. Thank you.
We'll take that as a moved and seconded. Any discussion from the committee? Representative Johnson?
I think that's a smart thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Question.
Question, all those in favor of adopting this amendment as a piece of legislation to move forward to management council? Karen, would you?
Just a second. Madam Chairman, you probably ought to check with LSO, make sure that they're comfortable with that. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, hey, we want this to be a bill draft. Because if not, the other option we could do is just alert management council that we were asking them to take up this specific issue, have the bill draft prepared for them to review, not necessarily coming from us, but that you and the co-chairman could bring to management council as an issue that came up during this meeting. We weren't really able to get it put into proper form to be voted on this committee, but there was a general consensus, probably 6-0 general consensus from the committee, but we didn't, putting LSO in that spot probably is not maybe the best option.
I'll ask for clarification from LSO on how to proceed.
Madam Chairman, thank you. And that's a great point. In this instance where you're only recommending legislation to be considered before another committee, I am comfortable with your vote on this conceptual bill. As I believe that you all understand it, where there is something written in the form of an amendment in front of you. So you shouldn't be surprised when you see it on paper. There won't be conforming things needed. The title is basically there for you. I think you all are capable of voting on a recommendation. It's not quite the same as a conceptual bill that's before an interim committee, that the next step is sponsorship and numbering on the floor. So I will put it into bill draft form. If you all vote to approve it and recommend it to management council, the co-chairs will approve the entire package for management council, as well as the cover letter that'll probably go with those bill drafts. And then within that, you'd have a new bill draft number with this concept if you vote to approve it. If you want to do it in concept too, we can just write it up for management council, and that's fine as well with me.
For my clarity purposes, is it a roll call vote for us today?
Yes, we're doing roll call votes for your formal recommendation, so we can provide that to Management Council.
Thank you very much. Ms. Karen, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Senator Craig.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Representative Johnston.
Aye.
Representative Webb.
Aye. Aye.
Co-Chairman Cole.
I didn't hear. Oh, might me?
Yeah.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Lean.
Aye.
You have 6 aye.
Thank you. Any further committee directives today? Co-Chair Cole.
Yeah, Madam Chair. I think as long as we can circulate out what you come up with for a bill draft for the rest of the task force, that would be, I think, appropriate. I appreciate your work, Dawn. Sorry for the short notice, but sometimes we find out things right at the last moment too.
I just want to say thank you to everyone today that came and participated in our committee. I want to thank you for the input and for making sure that we understand what's going on. And we know that your industry is growing. And as Mr. Ridgway said, we're building this plane as we fly it. So thank you for participating today, and we look forward to seeing you during session. We are adjourned. Ask her for a recap. Did we need one?
That was miracle legislation, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, great.
Yeah, heck yeah.
We can
Good
send out a
job.
recap.